hidden labs, unnamed subjects, and experiments no one was supposed to remember. These are the dark secrets of science that still haunt our world today. In the world of conspiracy theories, few stories are as enduring as the Philadelphia experiment. According to legend, in October 1943, the U.S. Navy attempted a top-secret experiment at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard that went horribly wrong. The goal? To make the destroyer escort USS Eldridge invisible to enemy radar. But what supposedly happened has fueled speculation for decades. Witnesses claimed that during the test, the Eldridge was surrounded by a strange greenish haze before suddenly disappearing from view. Some accounts even allege that the ship teleported hundreds of miles away to Norfolk, Virginia, and then reappeared in Philadelphia within minutes. If true, this would mean the Navy had discovered a way to bend space and time itself. The legend grows darker with the fate of the crew. Survivors allegedly reported horrific side effects. Some sailors were said to have gone insane, while others became disoriented, suffering memory loss. More chilling stories describe men partially fused into the ship's metal hull, their bodies stuck in bulkheads as if the teleportation had gone wrong. A few supposedly vanished entirely, never to be seen again. The origins of the story trace back to a man named Carl Allen, who sent letters to the U.S. Navy describing what he claimed to have witnessed. His accounts were bizarre, filled with technical jargon and wild claims about Einstein's unified field theory. While many dismiss Allen as an unreliable source, his story captured the public imagination. The U.S. Navy has repeatedly denied that any such experiment ever took place. They insist the Eldridge was never in Philadelphia during the time in question, and that the supposed disappearance was nothing more than a wartime myth. Officially, the ship's records show nothing unusual. Still, the Philadelphia experiment refuses to die. Books, documentaries, and even Hollywood movies have kept the tale alive, suggesting everything from time travel to secret government technology. For believers, it is evidence that military science has always been years ahead of what the public is told. Whether it was a misunderstood naval exercise, a deliberate hoax, or a glimpse into forbidden science, the Philadelphia experiment remains one of the most captivating mysteries of the 20th century. It speaks to our deepest fears and hopes that humanity may have stumbled upon secrets of the universe it was never meant to touch. One of the darkest chapters in American medical history is the story of the Tuskegee syphilis study. It began in 1932 and lasted for 4 decades until 1972 when it was finally exposed. What makes this case so shocking is not just the unethical nature of the experiment, but the fact that it was conducted by a government agency on its own citizens. The U.S. Public Health Service recruited around 600 African-American men from Tuskegee, Alabama. About 400 of them had syphilis, while the others served as a control group. The men were told they were being treated for bad blood, a vague term used locally to describe a variety of illnesses. In reality, they were never informed of their diagnosis, nor were they given proper treatment. Even when penicillin became the standard cure for syphilis in the 1940s, doctors running the study deliberately withheld it. Instead, the men were subjected to routine medical checkups and told they were receiving free health care, while researchers carefully documented the devastating progression of the disease. Many suffered blindness, insanity, organ failure, and death as a direct result. The consequences went beyond the participants themselves. Many of the men unknowingly passed syphilis to their wives, and tragically, children were born with congenital syphilis. This human cost is a chilling reminder of the reckless disregard for ethics in the name of science. The study only ended after a whistleblower leaked information to the press in 1972, causing public outrage. The revelation shocked the nation and led to a major overhaul in medical ethics, including the establishment of strict rules for informed consent and the protection of human subjects in research. In 1997, President Bill Clinton formally apologized on behalf of the U.S. government, acknowledging the deep pain caused by the study and its impact on the African American community's trust in medicine. The Tuskegee experiments remain a haunting example of how scientific ambition, when unchecked by morality, can become monstrous. To this day, the story is cited as one of the reasons behind ongoing mistrust of government healthcare programs in the United States. During the Second World War, Japan carried out some of the most horrifying medical experiments ever recorded. At the center of this nightmare was Unit 731, a secret military program based in occupied Manchuria. Officially, it was called the Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department. In reality, it was a massive laboratory of human experimentation. Prisoners, mostly Chinese civilians, along with Russians, Koreans, and even Allied soldiers, were subjected to unimaginable cruelty. Victims were infected with deadly diseases such as plague, cholera, and anthrax to study their effects. Some were deliberately exposed to frostbite and then mutilated so doctors could observe the body's reaction. Others were dissected alive without anesthesia under the guise of scientific research. The unit also tested biological weapons on entire villages, releasing plague-infested fleas or contaminating water supplies. These experiments killed thousands, and the suffering extended far beyond the walls of the facility. The scale of the atrocities remains difficult to fully comprehend, but estimates suggest that more than 200,000 people died as a result of Unit 731's actions. What makes this history even chilling is what happened after the war. Instead of being prosecuted like Nazi doctors at Nuremberg, many of the scientists involved were granted immunity by the United States in exchange for their research data. The U.S. government considered the information on biological warfare too valuable to ignore during the early Cold War. As a result, much of the evidence was buried, and many perpetrators went on to live normal lives in Japan, some even securing prestigious careers in medicine and academia. The crimes of Unit 731 remained largely hidden for decades, silenced by political convenience and denial. Only later did survivors' testimonies, declassified documents, and excavations of mass graves reveal the full extent of the horror. The Japanese biological experiments serve as a terrifying reminder of how science can be twisted into a weapon of unimaginable cruelty. They also highlight the uncomfortable truth that powerful nations often choose secrecy over justice when it suits their interests. Before the infamous MKUltra program, the CIA launched an earlier, secretive experiment known as Project Bluebird. Initiated in 1950, at the dawn of the Cold War, its goal was nothing short of terrifying: to explore methods of controlling the human mind. The CIA believed that if they could manipulate memory, extract secrets, or even create programmed agents, they would gain an unstoppable advantage over enemies. The project tested hypnosis, powerful drugs, sensory deprivation, and psychological conditioning. Soldiers, prisoners, psychiatric patients, and even unsuspecting civilians were used as test subjects. Consent was rarely given, and participants often had no idea what was being done to them. One of Bluebird's primary objectives was to discover whether agents could be made to resist interrogation, or conversely, forced to reveal everything they knew. Researchers also experimented with altering personalities and creating multiple identities within a single person, effectively trying to manufacture human puppets. The experiments were cruel and often left victims permanently damaged. Test subjects were injected with barbiturates, LSD, or truth serums. Some were placed under hypnosis and given disturbing suggestions.
Others endured extreme sleep deprivation, electroshock treatments, or combinations of drugs that pushed their minds to the breaking point. By 1951, Project Bluebird evolved into Project Artichoke, and later into MK Ultra, which would become notorious for its scale and brutality. But Bluebird was where it all began, the first step in the CIA's quest to unlock the secrets of the human mind. What makes this program especially disturbing is how deeply it was shrouded in secrecy. Most of the documentation was destroyed, and only fragments remain. Yet even those fragments reveal a shocking truth. The US government was willing to sacrifice human dignity, health, and even lives in the pursuit of control. Project Bluebird remains a chilling reminder of the dangers of unchecked power. It showed how fear, secrecy, and ambition can twist science into something nightmarish, and how easy it is for ethics to disappear when national security becomes the excuse.
In the mid-20th century, a new and deeply unsettling chapter in medical science unfolded: experiments involving the implantation of electrodes into the brains of humans and animals. While these studies were often framed as efforts to treat mental illness or understand brain function, the methods and implications bordered on science fiction or even horror. One of the pioneers in this field was Dr. José Delgado, a Spanish neuroscientist who conducted experiments in the 1950s and 60s. Using tiny electrodes implanted in the brain, Delgado was able to control the behavior of animals with the push of a button. Famously, he demonstrated this by stopping a bull in its tracks simply by stimulating its brain remotely. The implications were clear. The brain could be manipulated like a machine. But animals were only the beginning. In psychiatric hospitals and prisons, electrodes were implanted in human patients, often without true informed consent. Researchers believed they could treat depression, schizophrenia, or violent tendencies by altering brain activity. In reality, many subjects were left with severe side effects, including memory loss, personality changes, and irreversible brain damage. These experiments blurred the line between science and control. If behavior could be altered at will, could governments or militaries use such techniques to create docile citizens or obedient soldiers? The ethical questions were staggering, yet many researchers seemed more fascinated by the possibilities than concerned about morality. Delgado himself once declared, "Man does not have the right to develop his own mind. We must electrically control the brain." His chilling words highlight how easily the pursuit of knowledge can become entangled with the pursuit of power. Though the technology of the time was primitive compared to modern neuroscience, these early electrode experiments laid the groundwork for today's brain-computer interfaces and deep brain stimulation therapies. But they also left a dark legacy, one where human beings were treated as little more than test subjects for control. The story of brain implant experiments serves as a stark reminder: science without ethics can become a weapon. What began as research to heal ended up raising some of the most frightening questions about free will and human autonomy. For decades, the United States conducted secret experiments exploring one of the most mysterious aspects of human existence: sleep. What began as research into fatigue and performance quietly evolved into something far more disturbing: government-backed attempts to control and even eliminate the need for sleep altogether. During the Cold War, scientists working with the US military and intelligence agencies believed that sleep was a weakness, an obstacle that could limit the performance of soldiers and spies. If humans could be trained or conditioned to stay awake indefinitely, it could give the US a strategic advantage. The result was a series of classified programs that tested drugs, sensory manipulation, and psychological conditioning on both volunteers and unwilling subjects. In military laboratories and psychiatric hospitals, participants were kept awake for days, sometimes weeks, under constant observation. They were subjected to extreme light, noise, and psychological pressure. Some were given experimental stimulants such as amphetamines or early versions of modafinil, drugs designed to suppress the body's natural need for rest. At first, researchers focused on performance and endurance, but soon the studies turned darker. Subjects began to show severe cognitive decline, hallucinations, and violent behavior. Some experienced complete mental breakdowns, while others suffered long-term psychosis. Records suggest that several participants died from exhaustion, though official reports often listed vague causes such as cardiac failure. Declassified documents hint that these experiments were partially connected to MK-Ultra and similar programs, which sought ways to manipulate the human mind. By depriving subjects of sleep, scientists hoped to break their will, enhance suggestibility, or even erase memory. The human brain, deprived of rest, becomes malleable, a frighteningly effective tool for psychological control. Although many of these projects were later buried or destroyed, their traces remain. Former military doctors and technicians have since come forward, describing secret sleep labs where ethics were secondary to results. Today, we still don't fully understand the limits of sleep deprivation or how close those experiments came to breaking them. But one thing is certain: in their quest for control, some scientists treated the mind not as something to understand, but as something to conquer.
In the shadowy corners of post-war America, one of the strangest and least known experiments in psychological history took place: the Pratt Institute experiments. Conducted in the early 1950s in New York, this project combined hypnosis, drugs, and psychological conditioning in a chilling attempt to unlock the secrets of the human mind. The experiments were carried out at the prestigious Pratt Institute, but behind the academic facade lurked a far darker agenda. Funded by organizations later linked to the CIA's MK-Ultra program, researchers sought to determine how suggestion, when paired with powerful narcotics, could manipulate memory, behavior, and even identity. Volunteers, many of them students, were given substances such as LSD, mescaline, and barbiturates, then placed under deep hypnosis. Once in a trance, test subjects were given bizarre and often disturbing commands. Some were instructed to forget specific events. Others were told to perform tasks days later without recalling why. A few were even convinced that false memories were real and reacted to them emotionally, as if they had truly happened. At first, the project appeared purely academic. But as declassified documents later revealed, intelligence agencies quickly became interested in the potential applications. Could hypnosis and drugs be combined to create programmable agents? Could a person be made to lie, betray, or kill without knowing it? The results were unsettling. Several subjects reported severe anxiety, paranoia, and memory loss. Some never fully recovered from the psychological damage. One student described dreams that felt like someone else's life, suggesting that implanted memories blurred the boundary between self and illusion. By the late 1950s, the experiments were quietly shut down, their records sealed or destroyed. Officially, the project was labeled a failed academic study. Unofficially, it became one of many stepping stones toward MK-Ultra and later CIA mind control programs. Today, the Pratt Institute remains one of New York's most respected art and design schools. Few who walk its halls know that decades ago, the same rooms once echoed with whispered commands, hallucinations, and shattered minds.
While most people associate forced sterilization with totalitarian regimes, few realize that the United States once carried out such programs on a massive scale, and for decades they were completely legal. Hidden behind terms like eugenics and public health, these sterilizations targeted the poor, the disabled, minorities, and anyone deemed unfit to reproduce. The movement began in the early 20th century, inspired by a distorted interpretation of Darwin's ideas. American scientists and lawmakers believed they could improve society by preventing the birth of those considered mentally ill, criminal, or inferior. In 1907, Indiana passed the first sterilization law, and soon dozens of other states followed. By the 1930s, sterilization had become official policy in many institutions, including hospitals, prisons, and mental asylums. Victims were often told they were receiving routine medical treatment, not realizing their ability to have children was being taken away forever. Doctors justified their actions as for the greater good, while the victims' voices were ignored. The Supreme Court even upheld this practice. In the infamous 1927 case Buck v. Bell, Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes declared, "3 generations of imbeciles are enough." That single sentence legalized the sterilization of tens of thousands of Americans. The most disturbing fact? These programs continued well into the 1970s. Native American women, African Americans, and poor white women were frequently targeted. In some states, women giving birth in public hospitals were sterilized without consent, sometimes without even being told. Only in the late 20th century did the truth begin to surface. Investigations revealed that over 60,000 people had been sterilized across the U.S., though the real number is likely far higher. Several states later issued formal apologies, but many victims never received compensation or justice. Today, historians describe these acts as one of America's darkest chapters, a reminder that cruelty doesn't always wear a uniform or wave a flag. Sometimes it hides behind a clipboard, a white coat, and the illusion of progress. In 1961, a Yale University psychologist named Stanley Milgram conducted one of the most disturbing experiments in modern history. He wanted to answer a simple but terrifying question. How far will ordinary people go in obeying authority, even when it means hurting someone innocent? The experiment was deceptively simple. Volunteers were told they were helping test the effects of punishment on learning. They met another participant, actually an actor, and drew lots to decide roles. The volunteer always became the teacher, while the actor played the learner. The learner was strapped into a chair with electrodes, and the teacher was told to administer an electric shock every time the learner made a mistake on a word memory test. With each wrong answer, the voltage increased, from mild discomfort to dangerous levels labeled XXX, lethal. Of course, no real shocks were given, but the teacher didn't know that. As the actor screamed in pain, begged to stop, and eventually went silent, the experimenter, dressed in a gray lab coat, calmly urged the participant, "Please continue. The experiment requires that you go on. You have no other choice. You must continue." The results shocked the world. 65% of participants continued to the highest voltage, fully believing they were delivering potentially deadly shocks. They sweated, trembled, and protested, but they obeyed. Milgram concluded that the human tendency to follow authority is frighteningly strong, even when it goes against morality, empathy, and conscience. His work became a psychological mirror reflecting the horrors of obedience seen during the Holocaust and in countless atrocities since. The experiment remains controversial. Some say it was unethical, too cruel to the participants who thought they were torturing someone. But others argue it revealed a truth society needed to face. The capacity for evil doesn't only exist in monsters, it lives in all of us, waiting for permission. Among the shadowy rumors of secret government projects, Project Monarch stands out as one of the most chilling and controversial. Unlike documented experiments such as MK Ultra, Monarch is often described as the hidden continuation of mind control research, allegedly blending trauma, psychology, and occult symbolism to create perfect human puppets. According to the theory, Project Monarch emerged in the late 1970s as MK Ultra was shutting down. Instead of ending mind control experiments, conspiracists claim the program went deeper underground, focusing on a terrifying technique called trauma-based programming. Victims, often children, were supposedly subjected to extreme abuse, sensory deprivation, and hypnosis to split their personalities. These alters could then be programmed to perform tasks without conscious awareness. One of the most unsettling aspects of the Monarch theory is its link to pop culture and celebrity imagery. Supporters claim that the butterfly, especially the monarch butterfly, symbolizes the transformation of the victim's mind. They point to music videos, Hollywood films, and stage performances filled with butterfly motifs, checkerboard floors, and one-eye symbolism as supposed signs of hidden programming. The alleged goal? To create an army of controlled operatives, spies, assassins, and even entertainers whose public personas would be a cover for covert missions or propaganda. Conspiracists argue that famous figures who behave erratically or break down publicly are actually experiencing cracks in their programming. But here's the catch: no hard evidence exists to confirm Project Monarch. There are testimonies from individuals claiming to be survivors, but nothing has been officially verified. Mainstream researchers classify it as a modern myth, born from a mix of real Cold War experiments, pop culture, and internet speculation. Yet the theory persists, partly because it reflects genuine historical abuses like MK Ultra, Tuskegee, and secret sterilization programs where governments really did experiment on their own citizens. Monarch taps into a deep cultural fear that behind the smiles and lights of power, manipulation is happening at a scale too vast to imagine. Whether real or not, Project Monarch has become a symbol, not just of alleged mind control, but of the public's distrust of authority and its hunger to uncover hidden truths. They said it was science. We call it horror. More dark experiments are waiting. Subscribe before they silence the truth again.